Media for Social Good. Show of hands, this is your first Social Media Week event? Second
Welcome.
Social Media Week event? Third Social Media Week event? Oh my God, hardcore. Okay, more than third. Woo! Look at you keeners. Well, thank you guys all so much for joining us today, and for those of you who've been joining us all week. My name is Jay Oatway, and this is Ali Bullock. And this is Social Media for Social Good.
Okay, so we're going to do some very, very quick intros. I'll intro Jay, just to confuse you, the marvellous Jay Oatway, author of Social Media and Influence, #1 on the Amazon list for social media books, published in Hong Kong, I believe.
Its full title is Mastering Story, Community, and Influence, How to Use Social Media for Social how do you use social media to be a social leader? I was going to say for social good. But you can use it for that too.
Go to jayoatway.com to buy a copy, correct?
Yes, or Amazon.
Or Amazon.
They sell books.
Jay Oatway is sporting the very lovely SPCA t-shirt, as you can see there. Raise a hand, who has a rescue dog, rescue cat, rescue alligator, crocodile, hippo?
Who's
rhino?
got 4 of them?
Who's got 4? Hands up. Look, Alison, yay. Michael, excellent, 4. Ooh. Although if you talk to my wife, technically we have 5 rescues because I'm included in that. Okay, so I think we're done with the introductions.
Well, wait, we haven't introduced the fabulous Ali Bullock.
Oh.
Formerly known for his good work at Cathay Pacific. Now, as you can see, he's sporting the World Wrestling Federation shirt there. WWF, head of communications, started this week and is already playing hooky to be here. You're so gonna get fired. And yes,
Thanks for telling me, Jay.
Exactly. I'm so telling your boss. And there's one other intro that you need to do up here, right?
Yes, there is. We've got a bit of a doggy theme today. As many of you know, we're going to be introducing a dog that's looking for a home. The hashtag will be Save Spring Roll. We're going to talk about Spring Roll a bit later on, and we have the SPCA as well here. We're not bringing in Spring Roll just yet because we want you guys to pay attention to us. We don't want the attention to take away from me and Jay to, of course, to the pooch. But you will be seeing a pooch a bit later on.
Only if you're good.
Very good. Okay, so I want to see lots of hashtags. Okay, about Save Spring Roll. We'll talk about that later, what we're doing this year, and adopting dogs, of course. But speaking of adopted dogs, final introduction, of course, Padstow. This is, of course, the dog that wrote the Woof Guide, and, of course, the reason that I got into social media, adopting dogs, and meeting Jay. So the first thing is, who's the most social on Facebook? Well, it turns out, who's got more than 500 friends on Facebook? Let's have a show of hands. Okay, well, not so many, okay. So I get him in at 600 or so. Padstow, as you can see, he has 930 friends on Facebook. So he actually has more friends on Facebook than most of you do, which is quite interesting. And he is a dog. Anybody who wants to be friends with him, he is Padstow Pug on Facebook. He does talk to you, and he makes occasional rude comments. Of course, the winner, though, of course, in social media is, of course, Jay Oatway, with 1,163
It's not a competition.
It's very big of you to say that, Jay, seeing as you're the winner.
It's all about quality.
How many Twitter followers do you have, Mr. Oatway?
More than 100,000.
More than 100,000, ladies. The king of social media in Hong Kong. So, Padstow wanted to leave you a little message, Jay. He just wanted to say hello. He is not the highest rated person in this room in terms of Facebook fans, but he asked me to deliver this message, and I apologize in advance for this, but that's what he said to let you know. So there we go. If anybody wants to be friends with him, I warn you that's not the worst thing he will say on social media.
I've taken Padstow for a walk. It's exactly the same dog he is.
Okay, so let's move along. Let's talk about some social media. Let's talk about some social good. First up here is, how are CSRs, NGRs, how are they evolving into this social media space?
All right, first show of hands, be honest, who doesn't know what CSR means? No, really, I mean, I better get this out of the way now. How about NGO? We good? Everybody good? All right, moving on.
Okay, excellent, okay. So here's a great example. You want to talk about this one, or should I talk about it?
Go on.
Okay, so really want to talk about this. This is a very, very interesting example. We talk about social media and social good. People often think that NGOs don't get CSR. People think, NGOs, what are they doing, right? How are they making money? Do they really get what they're doing in social media? And what's interesting is NGOs are getting smarter and smarter in the social media space, okay? There's good things to this and there's bad things to this. But let me just be clear. My belief, as somebody, head of communications at WWF, is that NGOs are no different to consumer brands when it comes to social media, okay? Just because you put your money back into your organization to do good in the world doesn't mean that you're entitled to some gift. Right? We have to work as hard, if not harder, to actually get fans on Facebook, to get followers, to get engagement. Right? It's no different for an NGO than it is for a corporate organisation. So many of the things we'll talk about today apply to NGOs and they apply to brands in the same context. Really, when we talk about evolving, though, you know, it used to be that when you work for an NGO, you'd put up a cute photo on Facebook, you'd say, this dog's looking for a home, you know, we're trying to stop the third runway, as an example, things like that in Hong Kong, and people would like it, people interact with it, and it's all good, okay? Wonderful. Well, things have moved on. As we've become more savvy to social media, the NGOs have got a lot smarter. This campaign is by, actually, spoiler alert, it's actually by Greenpeace. How many of you have seen this campaign before? So half the room. Okay. So, spoiler alert, this is actually an NGO campaign. Okay. But it does look a lot like Shell, doesn't it? Right? So the idea, of course, was that you can see what looks like a Shell website. You see lots of images. The idea behind this was basically that people would upload taglines to put on cute photos of animals in the Arctic. Okay. So a social media driven competition, if you will. But of course, it didn't quite go as planned, or that's what the idea was, of course, of Greenpeace. As you can see, some great lines here. You know, you can't run your SUV on cute. Okay, so you can imagine, if this was a real site, of course, you can imagine how it would have looked. Incredibly powerful engagement that this NGO achieved. Okay, so this isn't Shell, okay, this is actually an NGO. They had millions of likes, comments, tweets about this. Okay, you can imagine the damage that they were doing to Shell.
And the reason for that is the reason we share things online is because it's got a value to us. We call it social currency. These are funny. And when you find something that's humorous, something that touches, that sparks emotion, it makes it something that people really want to share. And so Greenpeace, by pretending to be Shell and then putting up messages that Shell would never put up, were quite well received by many people, and these things spread very quickly. So when we think about getting into the social media space, about trying to get messages, people always say, oh, I want to create something that goes viral. Yes, well, good luck to you. The single best thing you can do to guarantee the success of it going viral is to make it really awesome. Make it really fun, really cool, really something that taps into emotions. And that's what Greenpeace has done with this one.
I think that's very true. I mean, to be honest with you, when I first saw this, I thought this was a social media campaign that had gone horribly wrong. It fooled me. Right? I mean, I'm sure many of you, I mean, I really, really thought this was Shell's campaign. I thought, oh, this is going to be a great story for a Hong Kong social. This is going to be a great one that I'll email to Jay. And of course, as I looked through the site, I went, hold on a second. Shell wouldn't be putting these images up, right? Shell would be moderating, because Shell really probably don't want these sorts of images going up. I mean, if we just look previously, birds are like sponges for oil. If you're Shell, you're probably not going to be allowing that one to go on. So, of course, I worked out something fishy was going on. Of course, a Google search alerted, of course, it was, as Jay says, Greenpeace. What is incredibly interesting here is, you know, Greenpeace didn't go down the traditional route, right, of putting up a campaign, a protest, right? They fooled people into thinking this was a real Shell social media campaign. That's what NGOs now have to do to get the viral effect. It's not enough for, you know, NGOs and social good to go, we've got a cause and we're just going to put it up there and it's going to go viral. You have to be incredibly smart, and that's exactly the same for consumer brands as well. In this instance, I don't think Shell were exactly thanking Greenpeace, but it's not exactly like they're best buddies anyway. But of course, you know, critically, it can go wrong for NGOs. Okay, something that Jay and I were, you know, sort of keen to talk about really is what happens when it does go wrong. And here's something that went up, of course. Save the Arctic, of course, was the website behind this fake Shell website. And of course, this was this Greenpeace's argument to stop the work that Shell was doing. What's interesting, of course, is they put this image up. They said, people power wins, 2 billion people together, scrapped, no more drilling in the Arctic. And you think, fantastic news, right? Wonderful, that's great, well done. We all fell for that site, we all laughed, we all shared it, we all added our own rude comments, we all hate Shell. Well done, Greenpeace, well done, well done. Here's the problem, though. That tagline is a little bit misleading. Shell had a very small spill in an area they were test drilling in the Arctic. They couldn't clean it up. Ergo, they missed their targets and the government pulled their licenses to drill. Unfortunately, People Power didn't stop Shell, and they've only stopped for a year. Shell will be back in the Arctic. So Greenpeace had put out a headline that, while true, was a little bit misleading. So what we've got to remember as NGOs, certainly this one in particular, of course, is, case in point. You've got to be very careful. When you go out into social media can bite back. You've got to be constantly careful. Jay, what do you think?
It's about building real, authentic community as well. They claim to have 2 million people backing them, and bully to them if they do. I have my doubts. I think it's really hard for even Justin Bieber and his 20 million fans to go double platinum with his record. People have much larger followings online than they ever get engagement. So if they think they've got 2 million people working together through social media, that would mean that they've got better engagement than Justin Bieber, which I have my doubts. So I think we've got to be really honest with people about how many people get together. But the truth is we don't need 2 million people. A lot of the great change in the world comes from small groups of people getting together and making a positive choice.
And I hope today we're going to show how a small group of people can make a really good influence, because of course we have a spring roll coming up a bit later. And I agree with everything Jay said. You've got to be very, very careful about what you say. Only a couple of weeks ago I just got back from Cambodia, and I was photographing some elephants. So I put the photos up online, and I was about to put up on Twitter, just got back from Cambodia shooting elephants, and I realized head of communications for WWF probably shouldn't be saying shooting elephants. So I was like, photographing elephants, just got back photographing elephants. So for anybody who's going to tweet that out, that was photographing elephants, okay, not shooting elephants. So you do have to be very, very careful about what you put on social media, of course. Okay, so a key point here about what does social media for social good mean for brands? What can we do differently? How can we engage with people? This is a question I think we're constantly asked, not only from the NGO space, but of course from the brand perspective space, from the agency space. What can be done in this area? And I'm going to hand this one over to Jay, if that's okay, to comment on. There we go. This story was Heineken, and Jay's going to take us through it.
Look at this. This is an illegal dog fight in Mongolia, sponsored by Heineken. All right, who thinks that Heineken really is sponsoring illegal dog fights in Mongolia? No, of course they're not. The question is, of course, those of us who live in Asia realize that, yeah, you can have banners with pretty much anything printed on them, easily enough. And it can lend a lot of credibility to your illegal dog fight when it makes it look like you've got a big label beer backing you. So of course, this is social media, and a picture like this gets circulated a lot because, well, unlike you wise people, there's a lot of people out there who believed that Heineken was sponsoring illegal dog fights. So Heineken then, responded in the worst sort of way. They went on Facebook and they said, no, we're not sponsoring illegal dog fights. And they had about 100 people commenting and things, and they answered a few comments back. And that was it. That's all they did. They had a brief conversation on Facebook about it. And I think this was an enormous missed opportunity for Heineken. In a moment where suddenly media attention and a lot of consumers are all talking about you and dogs, this is an ideal time for you to dip into your CSR resources and say, all right, you know what? Let's go host a whole bunch of Adopt the Dog days. Let's get involved in doing, some real positive good around dogs. Let's actions speak louder than words. Simply putting up a denial of your involvement on Facebook is not enough. I think we have to go from the online world into the offline world and show what we're doing. And then put pictures of all those great dog events up on your Facebook page. Show positive action at work to counter pictures like this that are showing, well, false but negative.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think for all the agencies and, of course, all the brands out here, it's worth looking at your CSR policy and thinking, who are you helping? Who are you working with? Certainly for agencies, advice to your clients, make sure you are working with some NGOs. Not only do you need to roll those out in times of crisis, but it's also good for your employees.